These are all tapes. Take a look at these tapes. The title, see if you can remember.
It says Paul.
What's this one? Let's see if I can remember this.
I remember places where it happened. I remember smells. I remember the sun coming through the rectory window. I remember the placement of the furniture in the room in the rectory. I remember the red leather upholstery. I, for the life of me, cannot remember how long it happened. My guess is it happened over the course of about 4 to 6 months between the spring and the summer in '64. There's parts that you just, I think your subconscious protects you. It just kicks in and you don't want to remember that. For a long time, I've thought I wanted to write about this. It's not the story of my life. It is a thing that happened to me. It's got to be confusing to people. People must wonder, how could you let this happen to you? Why didn't you tell somebody about it? Why didn't you stop it? Why didn't you walk out of the room? I think that it's hard enough for me to understand how I let it happen to me. I mean, it's hard, that's part of why I've sort of beat myself up for years. I thought I'd let it happen to me. It's that whole power structure, that whole environment that we're in that allows this to happen, and hopefully something like this can explain that.
This is my brother Paul, my father Paul, my grandfather Paul. My name's Joe.
I don't like to be in films.
This is my mother Josephine,
Oh, God.
her father Joseph. This is Nonna, my grandmother Maria, my sister Maria, Mary, Mother of God. Here's how it all starts. Salem, Massachusetts, best known for its witchcraft trials and executions. Our small pocket of the city was an Italian neighborhood, close-knit, one house tied to the next, by clotheslines, by culture, by bonds of family and friendship. And in that neighborhood, a church, St. Mary's Italian, built in 1925 by the neighbors, a place where everyone met for religion and community, a tribute to lost loved ones. Down the street was our house, built by my grandfather Joseph, my mother's father. It's where we grew up and where my parents still live.
54, you weren't even born then.
This is Paul Maria.
My sister Maria was 10 years older than me, and my brother Paul 9. You lived in this house and you came to know it intimately. On every spare wall, Jesus, Mother Mary, and the saints, keeping time, tracking our movements. In the hallway, popes and cardinals kept an eye on the door and the stairs. We lived up those stairs, where the saints made room on the walls for my father's paintings. It was a hobby he came home to after days of factory labor. In this house, there was comfort in details, familiar crevices and paint peels, family hiding places. For 30 years, my brother Paul hid a secret about something that happened to him in Salem, not far from here. And for the 12 years since he told me, I've been wondering how he could have hid it so well. And where. And so I've been looking back at those hiding spots we both knew, and looking for other spots that Paul just kept to himself.
It was a big Italian family. Our grandmother and a couple of our aunts and uncles lived downstairs. From time to time, there were various cousins and our older Sicilian relatives who were sharing the space.
Nonna, she would talk to us in Italian, and she was a love. It was a wonderful, childhood.
Mom had 7 brothers and sisters. I'd say for the first 10 years of my life, they all lived in that same house or within a block of each other. So there was this tradition of family. You were surrounded by family.
That's him.
That's Paul and
That's Paul and Nicole.
It was very protective, very safe, very nurturing. There were all these people who clearly loved you, and you were very much like them. Maybe the downside of it was that once you got out into a world where people weren't speaking that dialect and people weren't your family, you could get into some trouble.
When we first got married, my wife and I agreed that all my children had to have a Catholic education.
The Italian church, St. Mary's, didn't have a school. And St. James, which was the Irish parish not that far away, they had a kindergarten through high school. I still dream that I'm in that school building. The convent was right next to it, and the church was on the other side of it, and the rectory was across the street. It was all nuns. There were no lay teachers back in those days.
That dress is frightful enough in itself. If you came home and you said, oh, sister, somebody was yelling at me, it wasn't, what's wrong with sister? What's wrong with you? What did you do? As children, we were very passive, and we were just told to do it. We did it.
A very strict learning environment, and religion was a big part of it. Cross and the flag, ready for anything that comes at you. Here's First Communion. Who made you? God made me. Why did God make you? He made me to know, love, and serve him in this world and to be happy with him in the next. I mean, I can still rattle that shit off, and I'm 53, so this is like 48 years ago.
This has to be his confirmation class.
There was this part where you had to beat your chest and say, mea culpa, mea maxima culpa. That means through my fault, through my most grievous fault. The May processions, well, every year they would have this procession. They'd get every kid from kindergarten all the way up to the graduating girls in the senior class. A long line of kids. Each of their nuns would be standing next to them with a little clicker, keeping them in line. Some girl in the senior class, they'd pick the May Queen. They had these little page boys. I was a page boy with a little blue beret-like puffy hat and a kind of little skirt-like thing. If you could get a kid to dress up like that, you could get a kid to do anything. There was the Catholic Church, and everything else was hell. Everyone beyond the bounds of the Catholic Church were doomed. Everything was presented to you in terms of sin. I remember these images of hell. Souls being tossed down into hell and the flames coming up and the devil being down there. The vision you had of life that you picked up early on was that you had to sort of tread a narrow path. There was a lot of things that you just shouldn't do, and if you did them and you had the misfortune of dying soon thereafter, you were going to be one of those souls that were being tossed down into the flames. So it was sort of this game that you played where you committed these sins and then you'd go into the confessional on Saturday and reel off your sins, and the priest would say, yep, okay, you're safe, go. And then you'd go out and do it again, and then you'd come back and say it again. I bought it hook, line, and sinker. The women in our family gave more credence to what the priest would say than they did to their husbands or their brothers or their uncles. That's kind of the way they were brought up. I think it's partly fostered by the whole myth of the priest's purity and moral superiority, because they supposedly live this humble existence apart from the physical pleasures that the rest of the people indulge in.
These were the people that could walk on water. They were the authority figures, and whatever they said, we as little lambs would go.